This video started as a low-cost strategy for players starting the league late, and it immediately veered off of a cliff into the domain of madness, where I've just kind of been floating for the last several days. Hi, it's Larold, and I'm going to talk about Harbingers. But before I do, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, let's just go ahead and kind of jump right into the setup and results and so on from this strategy. So as I said, the initial plan was to kind of come up with something that I think would be good for people who are arriving late to the league. Had several comments asking for something along those lines, and I think the original low-cost ambush strategy that I came up with, where you're using just all cheap ambush scarabs, kind of fits that bill. I think it maybe fits that bill a little bit better than this. But this does have some advantages to it as well that one lacks, and kind of want to just get right into those right now. Harbingers are a little bit weird. Harbingers don't scale with quantity. They certainly don't scale with rarity, since they all basically only just drop currency, and currency isn't really a thing that can be scaled with rarity. But they don't scale with quantity or rarity on items. You know, your character's magic find gear, that's fine, right? You're not magic finding to do Harbingers. That's okay. They also don't scale with quantity and rarity on the map. That's where things get a little bit weird, because unlike with doing ambush, doing really most strategies where having corrupted 8 mod maps is a big advantage, a big increase in the amount of stuff that comes from the content that you're killing, it isn't for Harbingers. So doing cheapo depot Harbingers is actually basically just as profitable as doing 8 mod maps for Harbingers. Now, it isn't exactly, because of course there's still other stuff in the map to kill, and 8 mod map monsters are going to be more plentiful and more rewarding than Alk and Go map monsters. But in general, the Harbingers themselves are going to be the same whether you're doing like a chisel Alk and run it with 4 mods, or a very juicy, dangerous, corrupted 8 mod map. Now, Harbingers can be quite a gamble strategy because they drop currency fragments, and because the way that we like to do them is basically to run one of each scarab, and I'll go ahead and pull those out now. Now, a big positive of Harbingers, and frankly, I think this is because they're not very popular. People don't really love doing them. But a big positive is that all of these scarabs, Harbinger Scarab giving you more guys, 1 chaos. Harbinger Scarab of Discernment making all of the monsters, all the Harbingers drop more valuable currency shards, 1 chaos. Harbinger Scarabs of Regency, giving you a 50% chance to have the Harbingers be a Harbinger boss, which is way, way more valuable, and that does stack with, what is it here? First wave, 25% here, so 75% of all the Harbingers in your maps are going to be the bosses, which are significantly more valuable than the regular Harbingers. You know, we're talking about, you'll see like full screens of currency shards dropping instead of 2. Also, 1 chaos. And then the last one here, Harbinger Scarab of Warhordes, duplicating all the currency shards. This is the only one that was like worth more than 1 chaos when I was buying them and looking at them, and they were 2 chaos. So again, very, very cheap as a strategy to get up and rolling. And my initial plan was to do about 30 maps of this and just kind of say like, hey, this is a cheap strategy you could do. Here's how much I farmed with it. And once I hit the end of those 30 maps, I found that I hadn't gotten a fracturing shard drop yet. And I was kind of annoyed by that. So I thought, you know, like, let's maybe push it till I get a fracturing shard drop. And so I was doing corrupted 8 mod maps at first, knowing that they weren't necessarily more valuable, but just thinking like, I have a lot of corrupted 8 mod maps, so it would be kind of nice to play some of those and maybe get some more valuable drops out of the maps themselves. And that's what I did. And once I hit around the 60 map mark, I realized like I'm kind of actually pretty low on the remaining 8 mod maps that I'm like wanting to run. And I did basically an even mix of Dune and Jungle Valley for those corrupted 8 mod maps. Pretty much an even split of those. I think I did about 55 of them combined. And then I did like 5 Glaciers just to see like, is there something special about Glacier? Can I like blow through Glacier in like half the time as the other 2 maps? Because Glacier is kind of a quicker map, offset by the fact that it doesn't have any good div card drops in it. And I didn't think it was spectacular or anything kind of special like I had thought with Ambush. So I like Glacier, cool map, it's fine, but I felt that Dune and Jungle Valley, since they drop Fortunate cards, were definitely better for doing Harbinger than Glacier. Now, once I hit the end of those 60 maps, I still hadn't gotten a Fracturing Shard yet at all, and I was pretty annoyed by that. So I said, like, all right, I guess what I will do is I will just continue to run these. I'll set up 20 like Chisel and Alk maps, and I decided to do those with Cemetery instead. And I'll just do 20 of them, and I'll just do them in sets of 20 until I get a Fracturing Shard. So I did set up my initial set of 20 cemeteries, and I started running those. And on map number 12, so 72 in total, I got my first and only Fracturing Shard drop of the entire farm strategy of 120 maps. I got 2. So that means I got 1, and then it was duplicated by the Harbinger Scarab of Warhordes. So 2 total Fracturing Shards in this whole set. I think that's pretty unlucky. I've gone back and looked at some like Reddit posts of people doing thousands and thousands of Harbingers in past leagues, and they said, generally speaking, that they thought that Ancient Orbs were about 50 times more common, and I had not sorted these out yet here, so let's just kind of weigh out the difference here. Ancient Orbs, yeah, I have, what is this, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, 129, 149, 169, 189, 209, 213 Ancient Orbs to 2 Fracturing Shards. So I would say that I got a little unlucky in terms of the Fracturing Shard drops. So as I said, I got my only Fracturing Shards on map 72. So I'd already set up the 20 maps for that set, and I decided I'd just finish them out, see if I got anything valuable. I didn't. In fact, that whole set was kind of unlucky. I mean, clearly, but like the first 3 maps, I didn't get a single drop from Harbingers in the first 3 maps of that set that like passed through my loot filter, which was pretty brutal. And in terms of setting up your loot filter, you do want to be able to see Ancient Shards and Annulment Shards and Chaos Shards. Unfortunately, if you're not showing Chaos Shards, you will probably be losing on average about 5 to 10 Chaos per map, I would say. 5 Chaos per map anyway, which, you know, given the low cost of running these maps and the idea that this whole strategy is built around efficiency, I actually do think that losing 5-6 chaos a map is pretty bad. So you don't want to do that to yourself. Once I hit the end of those 20 maps, I thought like, all right, let's just go ahead and push through to 100. In fact, let's do 101. That's a fun number, 101 maps. I hit the end of 101, still hadn't gotten any more Fracturing Shards, and thought like, all right, well, doing 41 maps of Chisel, Alk, and Go, and then 60 maps of Corrupted 8-Mod maps doesn't really make sense. Let's go ahead and make it an even 60 of both. So I went ahead and did the even 60 of both, and the last 20 that I did of the Chisel, Alk, and Go was very, very successful. I had ended the night, because I hit the 101 mark last night, and then I did the last 19 just now before recording. I had ended the night by getting one of these, a 20% chance to craft an additional item corpse, and I threw that in one of my sale tabs for 2.8 divines or so, sold that off for 2 divines and 110 chaos, and that's all here. I had laid this out correctly, but then by adding in more currency to the tab. So anyway, that's that. And then I wasn't sure if I wanted to include that or not, but you know, I got it by running the map. I think it should go into the tab. So I was kind of unsure about whether I wanted to include it or not. I had just sold it off. I had counted the amount of currency out, but I put it in my regular currency tab instead of here. And then not just the very first map, the very first pack on the very first map of doing the like last 19 maps, I got another one, and I said, okay, I'm gonna slap that in there, and I'm gonna include the currency because I got it by doing the maps. It should go in there. Additionally, the reason I ran Cemetery is I was kind of hoping to get a Brother's Gift. You know, it's a very valuable div cards. 5 Divine Orbs is pretty good, and I hadn't gotten one in the first 40 or even the first 50 maps, and then I think on map 90 or 114, like map 54 of Cemetery, I got not 1 but 2. It got duplicated by a div card duplication altar. We are running blue Eldritch Altars, and that felt pretty great to get 10 Divine Orbs randomly out of that. That really made this a lot more profitable. But another thing, as you can see here, that is like really good about Harbingers is they have a tendency to spit out a lot of maps at you. Like I got 15 in the just like chisel out and go. I got 15 tier 17 maps. Now, one downside of running Cemetery is that they're all sanctuary maps. Sanctuary maps are significantly less valuable than like fortress maps, which in the 8 mod map setup, it kind of makes sense. I got 18. I got a little bit more in terms of tier 17 maps than I did in the just like chisel out and go lower quant and rarity and pack size maps. But Harbingers really do like to throw a lot of maps at you, so just getting a bit of extra map drop value is like pretty good, especially when you're still kind of doing things on a super duper budget early on in a league. All right, so just to show off some more interesting stuff that dropped throughout these in the span of 120 maps, with 60 of them being corrupted 8 mod and then the others just being chiseled Alcted Vald. I only got 1 Divine Orb to drop naturally. Like as you can see in this, I have the currency from selling the filled coffin with chance to craft an additional item, but that didn't drop. If I type in Divine, I have some Divine Orb cards because I took a lot of Eldritch Altars that anytime an Eldritch Altar would offer me, Eldritch minions have a chance to drop divination cards that give currency, or other divination cards, or like valuable stuff like that. I took that because getting the player modifiers that give you quant and rarity really isn't all that valuable in this strategy because of Harbingers not scaling with quant and rarity. And so, as you can see, only 1 Divine Orb in the whole run. I actually got more Sephiroth cards, which is from Eldritch Altar drops, than I did Divine Orbs, which is like pretty ridiculous. I did get some omens, nothing all super valuable. I did get an Einar's Memory of the Sacred Grove. That's kind of interesting. I got some fortunate cards from doing a combination of Jungle Valley and Dunes. Not a massive amount, but some. I got a few scout cards as well. And then I got just like some fun uniques. I got a bunch of Venter's Gambles that are all really bad. I got Arcane Cloak 2120, and I got a 2120 Vol Blade Vortex. Both of those came from Gimling All Flame Embers, and then I got a 2120 Vol Reap, also from a Gimling All Flame Ember, and then just a regular Enlighten and Enhance support that just dropped randomly, so that's cool. Another bad Venter's Gamble, and then once again a Cosprey's Malice. I don't know why the game is so insistent on throwing these Cosprey's Malices at me, and I got this in one of the final maps. I think the last like 2 or 3 maps that I was doing there. So again, like coming in right at the end with a Cosprey's Malice to make sure I didn't miss it. And also a Voidborn Reliquary Key, so that's fun. I've never gotten anything valuable from a Voidborn Reliquary ever. It definitely would make sense to just sell every single one of them I ever get, but you know, what if it's good this time? So now to talk about the setup, I already mentioned all of the Scarabs. I'll just kind of point them out and say they are basically all 1 Chaos Scarabs, and I think you should really run 1 of each of the Harbinger Scarabs. I think the only one you could maybe justify not running is the Harbinger Scarab of Warhordes. It's 2 Chaos. I do think it'll double the value of anytime you get lucky. The opposite, you know, the idea, the alternative would just be to shove even more Harbingers into the maps to get even more Harbingers in there with the regular Harbinger Scarabs. I don't think it's worth it. I think you look at Harbinger as gamble strategy, RNG heavy, and so you really want to make the times where you get lucky, where you hit, you want to make those as big as possible. So I wouldn't change a single thing here. Everything really synergizes together nicely. You're also obviously going to run Harbinger on the map device as well for 3 more Harbingers. And then you're getting 1 guaranteed from Ominous Arrival. And then 3 different small nodes that give you a 5% chance to get an extra Harbinger, for a combined total of 30% chance at an 8th Harbinger, but a guaranteed 7 Harbingers in every map, 75% chance for all the Harbingers to be bosses, 60% cooldown recovery rate, like faster spawning on the guys, currency can drop as the items instead. That's good. So there was a bug with this some time ago that's been fixed, where the currency, like the stacks of like 5 exalted shards would drop, and Previously, it would either convert the whole stack of them or it wouldn't, and now it's like an independent chance on every single one of the shards to convert into a full-sized orb, and so that really increases the amount of stuff that you get out of the Harbingers. So you take all the Harbinger nodes, very normal, and then even though Harbingers don't scale with any of the traditional like map scaling effects, you know, map mod effect, quant, rarity, pack size, all that stuff doesn't really matter for Harbingers. I still like to take all the stuff that juices it and juice Scarabs because we're still doing maps, right? We still have all the reasons that we would want to do maps, and I don't really think there's anything else that you could put in here that would be like a significant upgrade. I don't think trying to do some other league mechanic like shrines or something would be good. The current state of the end game is such that you really want to just focus on the one thing. In the past, I always like to do Ambush and Harbinger together, and so that is traditionally the way I would do them. I would do Ambush, Harbinger, and either like Crimson Temple or Cemetery or Jungle Valley, do one of those 3 maps and just spam run Ambush Harbinger for a long time, and I had a lot of fun doing that, and it's great. But you know, with the state of Scarabs as they are now, it really doesn't make sense to do that at all. I also kind of miss the boss rush Harbinger Sextant strategy that you do, where you would find a map that has 3 bosses in it, use the old Harbinger Sextant that would make bosses drop basically just a set of Harbinger currency, and also have a Harbinger near them, so you would just spam rush the boss. You would get 3 or 4 bosses, kill all of them at once. Basically 3 bosses and a Harbinger, kill all of them at once. That's like 4 Harbingers at once, repeat. Quite a bit faster than actually sitting and waiting on Harbingers to spawn. And that is maybe the biggest problem with Harbingers, and I think it's probably a good segue into comparing Harbingers and Ambush as a strategy. And I think the problem with Harbingers, if I had to really kind of nail it down, is that Harbingers don't have any sort of interaction with the Lantern of Arimor or the Allflame members that are part of this league mechanic, and Ambush does. So Ambush, if you're doing a super cheap version of the strategy, if you're not using the expensive Ambush Scarab, which I might not have any of, I think I do. Where are you at, Ambush? Here we go. Right here, Ambush Scarabs of Containment that convert basically the old Monstrous Treasure, convert all the packs in the map into strong boxes instead. The thing with Ambush is that when you click the strong box, it spawns packs of monsters, and those packs of monsters are monsters that are in the map. So if you're using Allflame Member to add valuable monsters in, if the Lantern of Arimor is giving you valuable modifiers on the packs that are in the map, those packs are going to spawn around the strong box. You kill them, you're going to get the reward from them, whatever it is. That doesn't happen with Harbingers. Harbingers just spawn their own unique tile set or whatever mob set of monsters, and you kill them, and they don't drop anything. Sometimes they'll drop maps. Actually, quite often they'll drop maps. I mean, case in point. But they don't drop currency. They don't drop items. They don't have any interaction with the Lantern of Arimor or any of that stuff. So that really is a problem in the current league. I think it is something that, because I think it's safe to assume that this set of mechanics from Necropolis League won't be carrying forward into future leagues. I think it's something that'll probably make Harbingers a lot stronger in future leagues than they are right now relative to Ambush, which will probably lose a lot of power and probably be overpriced early on in the next league, unless there is some league mechanic that it interacts with that Harbinger doesn't, which, you know, we can't know. But in the current league, which is where we're playing, I think it's a pretty clear weakness for Harbingers that they don't have any sort of interaction with the league mechanic. They don't really get anything out of it. And yeah, I mean, that's just that ain't great. It's definitely a downfall of them. I think, you know, also the fact that they don't scale with quant and rarity makes them good and like cheap and efficient for low cost farming. And that's great, but it means that there isn't like the high scaling potential. There's RNG potential. There are people who are out here farming for mirrors, and that's great for them, farming for fracturing shards and getting luckier than I did, and that's also great for them. It's definitely a gamble that can pay off, but it doesn't have the same level of consistency that a well set up, kind of somewhat juiced Ambush strategy does. And I should go ahead and show off the actual profit here. So we'll start with the 8 mod Harbinger setup. This was costing about 20 chaos per map because of the 8 mod maps being about 8 chaos, and then really not very expensive for anything else, 6 chaos for the map device. And I got about 48 chaos worth of value out of that according to Wealthy Exile, which I think is pretty accurate. I think the maps take about 3 to 4 minutes to complete. So I'd be a little conservative and estimate that at 3.5 minutes. I would say that's about 11.5 divines per hour. Not terrible, especially considering I didn't get any fracturing orbs. I got some okay returns, but nothing super, super insane. Now to compare that to the Chisel Out and Go strategy, where I actually got quite a lot more value, 55 divines. Some of that is definitely propped up by the 2 Brothers Gifts. The duplicated Brothers Gift really helped out a lot there, but even if you take that away, that's still 45 divines. And I got, 48 in the other strategy with a much higher cost, almost 20 chaos per map in the Corrupted 8 mod strategy. And I'm estimating the cost of the maps as being about 3 chaos if I'm chiseling and alking and going, and then everything else is the same. So I think maybe the biggest surprise for me was that the time per map was still about the same, about 3.5 minutes. I really thought it would be faster. With not having to deal with more map mods, and maybe it was by like 5 or 10 seconds or something. But the fact of the matter is, and this kind of ties into the biggest issue with Harbingers, you are artificially slowed by the spawn rate of their monsters. They're just not that fast. They just do not spawn guys that quickly. It takes a while for them to spawn dudes, and you really can't do anything about that at all. So I guess the positive is that you don't necessarily need to be a turbo zoomy build in order to maximize the value of doing Harbingers. But on the other hand, if you do have a super fast build, you're going to be limited by the slowness of Harbingers. I think just to kind of nail down a couple of other comparisons to Ambush, because I think those are probably the closest comparisons to each other. I think that the amount of Atlas passives you have to spend on Ambush and Harbinger are relatively similar. It's 5 here and 5 here, and it's 6 here and 4 here and 4 here. And then, you probably do want to spin these up here. So Ambush is definitely a little bit more point hungry than Harbinger. I mean, that's undeniable, but it's also more rewarding. It has better scaling. It doesn't have the same degree of forced slowness that Harbinger does. But it does have the downside of actually being a little bit more scary. You do actually have to click the strong box, and then a bunch of guys spawn around you and try to kill you. And maybe if you don't have phasing, you might get stuck in there with a detonate corpses strong box. And there's definitely some annoyance with strong boxes as well. There's also the price of strong boxes, with people really fixating on the containment scarabs. I know that price has gone up a bit lately, or at least allegedly it has. I feel like it always goes up on weekends. They're pretty high. 70% of a divine. They're pretty expensive, even though there's allegedly they're still saying that they're 46 chaos each. I don't think that's true at all. I think they're probably 100 chaos now, which that's pretty high. They do tend to go up on weekends, especially when they're kind of getting promoted by people like me. Whoopsie. That's a shame, because I also enjoy running Ambush. I actually find it to be quite fun. Although I have to say, in doing 120 maps of Harbinger, don't want to look at them for a while. Probably am done with doing Harbingers for the League, but I did have fun. I hit the last map and I was thinking I could do one more, but no. I wanted to balance out 60 of each of the 2 strategies, and I think this really kind of nailed down some things for me, which is, doing Harbingers cheap on Harbingers actually makes them pretty decent. I think 14 divines per hour, that's maybe a little inflated by the fact that I got lucky on the 2 Brothers Gifts, but it's also, in the span of 120 maps, I think I got very unlucky when it comes to fracturing shards. To get 2 fracturing shards total in 120 maps is pretty brutal. To get fracturing shards off of, I think, maybe the one non-boss Harbinger in that map in the first place is pretty bad. There have been quite a lot of times, including just for myself in the past, where I have gotten full fracturing orbs off of Harbingers, boss Harbingers, or even off of bosses back when the Sextant existed. So I do like Harbingers as a strategy, even if I feel like I I kind of got screwed here a little bit. All right, so who would I recommend Harbingers to? Would I recommend them at all? I think I would. I think they're still decently fun. I think maybe the biggest advantage they have over Ambush, over a lot of other farm strategies, is that you can just walk up and kill them, right? You don't have to do anything, like, it just works, basically. And I think that's actually a pretty big advantage that they have. You put them in the map, you go kill them, and then you have currency that you just pick up off the ground. That's all pretty good. Maybe the value of them isn't as high as some other strategies. I think it probably is better than my particular experience here, though. I really do think I got very, criminally unlucky with fracturing shard, fracturing orb drops. And obviously we've all seen on Reddit, basically every day somebody will post themselves getting multiple mirrors off of a Harbinger. If you want to go completely insane and try to farm until you get that, it might take you thousands of maps, but that is an option. It is definitely something you can do. It literally, if you farm it enough, it will happen. Might take thousands or tens of thousands of maps, but it eventually will happen. It's the best way to get a mirror in the game, without a doubt. Not necessarily the most fun, but it will happen eventually. So I think that Harbingers are pretty good. They're a gamble, but I actually think they're a pretty good gamble because they are so cheap. If all the costs on Harbingers went up significantly, then I would back off of them. But I don't think they're going to, because ultimately, I think the average return on them is a little bit lower than you get out of low-cost Ambush, and I think that's enough to basically push anybody who's focused purely on currency per hour efficiency, which most players are, into going for Ambush and away from Harbinger. I like Harbinger. I like that you can do them as a chisel out and go strategy and not really need a lot of gear to kill them, because they basically just spawn regular guys, and not need to be super fast to kill them that quickly because of their slowness. So I think that they work really well for somebody who's arriving late to a league or is on a character that's maybe a little underpowered and is trying to get up to snuff. I think they have that sort of artificial slowness to them that actually is pretty beneficial for characters that aren't turbo map blasters. But if you're on a turbo map blaster, then they're definitely not worth doing. I think there are a lot better gamble strategies than that, like doing tier 17 ambush with the Scarab of containment. I think that is a much better gamble strategy for high cost, but for low cost, yeah, Harbinger is actually pretty good. All right, I think that's it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.